Just waiting for everybody to connect in and we're going to get started. Thank you guys so much for joining today. Excited to be joining for our first ever publishing roundtable here at the University of Tennessee, talking about careers in publishing and the wide and multifaceted realm of careers that consists of. Very excited to be joined today by Katie Hanna, Kanika Lawton, Leah Rang, and very soon Sierra Swanson. She has exciting publishing news, which is why she's running late. So she'll be joining us today. So we're going to just start out with some introductions. I'll start. I am Erin Elizabeth Smith. I'm the Director of Career Development here in the English Department at the University of Tennessee. If you have any questions about careers or applications and things like that, I'm your gal. And I'll give my rundown at the end of this as well for office hours and whatnot. Yeah. If everybody would just, our fine presenters would let us know your name, your pronouns, and then tell us a little bit about what you do in publishing.
I can start first. So my name is Kanika Lawton. My pronouns are they, them. I'm the staff director of Sendra's Publications, where I also run the editorial internship program. And I was also once an editorial intern with Sendra. So I know both sides of the internship there. So if you have any questions about that or how to break into publishing from the internship side, I can definitely answer those questions.
I will go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Leah Rang. My pronouns are she, her. I am based in New York City, and my publishing experience has been more on the educational side of publishing. I worked for quite some time at Macmillan Learning, working on the higher ed textbook publication. So it's very likely you've used some of the books that I have had my hands on.
Same here. I'm Katie Hanna. I'm the director of the University of Tennessee Press, and I have been in that role for only about 6 months. So new to that role, but previously I spent many years at W.W. Norton. So most of you, I'm sure, have used a Norton anthology at some point in your careers. Also came to publishing through having gone through a master's program and most of a PhD program, and sort of fell into publishing that way.
That's wonderful, and I'm really excited to hear kind of your origin stories, as it were. I think so many of our students, both undergraduate and graduate students, are really interested in careers in publishing, and so I'm kind of curious to start out to tell us a little bit about how you got started. What did you start with an internship? Was publishing your dream job? Was there or was it one of those happy accidents in terms of how you ended up here?
You want to keep the same order? Kanika, do you want to go first or you want me to go first?
I don't mind going first. This order works well for me. I started in publishing, trying to think, I want to say around 2015, 2016, I ran my own like online literary journal and I was editing or volunteering with other literary journals when the online lit scene really had a moment in the mid to late 2010s. And then around 2019, 2020, I applied for the internship program under Sundra's Publications. I got into the editorial internship, and that was a very enlightening experience for me, really seeing what small press publishing can look like, very much like the ins and outs and the behind the scenes look of a press that also made like physical books. And it wasn't, I love online publishing a lot, but it's very different in terms of online publishing versus having physical books out in the world. And I kind of built my way up. After my internship, I came on as an assistant staff director and then moved up to the staff director. And I've been in that role since 2021. And yeah, I kind of like build my way up, especially through Sundress.
Okay, so I came at it kind of in a roundabout way. Actually, as an undergraduate, I was majoring in broadcast journalism, and I was also taking English classes, and I realized that I preferred the longer form writing. So I finished that degree. I went to work for a PR firm for a couple of years and then decided to go to grad school. Um, got all the way through, I'm what they call ABD, which means that I did all the work for my doctorate, but I didn't write the dissertation, or I didn't finish the dissertation, I should say. And I was teaching 4 classes a semester at the University of Alabama, and I realized that I didn't want to teach 4 classes a semester. So I actually went to a career coach at that point, and it sort of came up that maybe I would needed to go into something like sales or marketing. And I went home and asked my husband, I said, well, I think I've got all this English experience. Maybe I should be in marketing and sales for a publishing company. Where do you think I should apply? And he said, well, there's Norton. And I literally applied to Norton and got a sales position there, within a few months after that. So that's kind of how I wound up in the field. And so I did sales for quite a long time. And then I did some marketing as well. And then I worked I created the custom department at Norton where we customized textbooks for specific programs. And then just started here in April.
That's really wonderful. And I love that you're both coming at this from very like different forms of publishing, different entry points. And I think, yeah, that's there's no one way into the industry, which I think is important to know. And you guys have touched on it a little bit, but I'm curious about like what was that like that first job, or first internship or first thing. What was that experience like? What was it? And Leah, I can also open this up to you, in terms of talking about our first positions in publishing and what they kind of taught you about the industry.
Yes, we can keep the same order. So the editorial internship at Sundress was actually my first ever internship. It was it was at a point in my life where I just finished my master's is in cinema studies. I'm currently a PhD candidate in cinema studies, and I was in between degrees. I knew I wanted to do the PhD, but I didn't want to fully immerse myself back into graduate school. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, not necessarily feeling listless, but very much, I've been in grad school for a little bit. I've always loved writing and editing. I was very much the person that edited all my friends' work, and gave really intense feedback, but it was always productive. It was never mean. And I saw this opportunity through Sundress, so I decided to apply. And I think Sundress, and especially the editorial internship through that program, made me a better editor. It made me more meticulous in the ways that like proofreading can work, the marketing side of things, how many emails you need to send off all the time. It is a very email heavy job. So just a bit of a forewarning, there's a lot of emails. But I think it did make me a better editor, which in turn made me a much better writer. While at Sundress is a lot of poetry and fiction and hybrid work, and it is quite different than doing academic and scholarly work, which is what I do as a PhD candidate and now a lecturer in my own right. These are not like incompatible modes. Like knowing how to edit that type of work and knowing how to write like academic work are very much intertwined. So I think it did make me a better editor and writer.
I love that, Leah.
Yeah, I can go next. So my first experience in publishing was as an editorial assistant. So I had already moved to New York, and was in the city, and then I was able to go in person and meet everybody in, excuse me, Macmillan Learning, and get the job. So the things that I think was surprised by initially of what publishing was, and again, this is in the academic side of things. So I was coming in having taught from the books that I was then starting to work on, kind of the other side of the curtain, which was very exciting to me. So I had a little bit of a subject matter expertise there just from my own experience, and kind of how much that was really important, being able to talk to and even have some connections with people who were professors or people, being able to speak the language of academia, which those were our authors, those were our customers in a lot of ways. So that was really important. But in that side of publishing and the textbook side, it's a pretty complex book you have. There's a lot of interior print design work that you get to do and weigh in on. Like, what kind of colors do you use? How do you make them accessible? Or accessibility is not just relying on colors. Like, all these kinds of things that I learned in those first few years, while, as Kanika was saying, writing a lot of emails, getting people to review the books and weigh in and ask questions, and paying and making invoices and all of these sort of things, learning the business of publishing. And that was when I was first introduced to that, because it was so theoretical when I first started, but getting the experience to learn that it was a business and kind of how it worked as an assistant. And then when I became an associate editor and rose through the ranks to a senior editor, I really kind of got to participate in the business myself.
Yeah, and I would say my experience is similar to Leah's. So I started out as a field sales rep, and back then I had the entire state of Florida. That was my territory. So I spent a lot of time on the road. And going back to the emails, when I started, I got a giant crate of papers that was filled with like letters, actual like letters that people had sent back and forth. But I think for me, it is a lot about learning that publishing is a business, and that's what they're in the business of selling books, and you have to realize that, even though everyone who is in the business that I've encountered has been very intellectual, loves reading, all of that kind of stuff. We're here to do commerce. And so figuring that out, and just realizing that, because I think when I first started as a sales rep, I was kind of like, can I really do this? Am I going to be able to do this? And I went out on the first day with my manager, and she was just, having these lovely conversations with all these people. And I kind of went, oh, wait, I can do this. So that was the big thing for me, is learning. It was not only learning that it was a business, but learning that I could do that. And I think sometimes we come at that as English majors. We sort of think that we are antithetical to that whole world, but we got to be a part of the world.
Well, I love that y'all are bringing up all the different things that publishing is. And I think so often, I definitely, when I was younger, I thought publishing was like, I was going to go to read novels, and I was going to tell them what could be better about them. And I think there's kind of sometimes a limited understanding of like how big publishing is and all the different kinds of roles and jobs that are in the publishing field. What are some of those positions in publishing? I know you guys have brought up a few already that students may not already know about, but have the chops to do.
Gonna just jump in and disrupt the order. I hope that's okay. Give you a little break. So I think in terms of where I was in Macmillan Learning, and just in the academic publishing space generally, there's a lot of opportunities. So you have, sales as Katie, and was her entry point. Obviously the editorial side, but a lot of people don't start there. I was lucky enough to start in editorial, but a lot of people start as in sales or marketing. In the academic side, there's different kinds of editorial. So you have like custom work, which maybe wasn't as glorified, but I knew a lot of people who started there and then kind of moved into the main titles. And then just general publishing work, which is a lot of project management, or publishing, sorry, production work. So a lot of project management, a lot of making sure the copy editor is doing what they're supposed to do, and really overseeing things and making things actually happen. So ordering the actual books and getting the cover to press and all of that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of that. There's also in that side of, or in the world I was in, there's a lot of growth in digital. So there's ways to be like a media person, to be a media editor, to develop assessments for learning, to be a product manager or an engineer even. The world of publishing is really expanding beyond just a print book that it just used to be.
And I guess I would say it's important to distinguish between the types of publishing. We're throwing around these terms, but textbook or college publishing or K through 12, that's one area. Trade publishing is what you all might be most familiar with, is just, reading novels, which nobody really gets to do that. Academic publishing is what I do now, so more scholarship and that sort of thing. And then there's also magazine publishing. So there's a million different ways to publish content, to produce content. So keep that in mind too. And then within that, people say, oh, I want to be an editor. Well, there's a million different kinds of editors too, right? So there's a lot of people do start as editorial assistant. You might be a copy editor, you might be a proofreader, you might be a developmental editor. What I think most people think of when they think of editors is the acquisitions editor, which is the person who actually signs the book and sort of sees it through to publication. So, but I think Leah's point about production, publicity, there's all kinds of different ways that you can, I don't think anybody's mentioned permissions and subsidiary rights. Those are other areas that you could work in where you're actually, if you're producing a book that has material from somewhere else, you have to get permission from those people. There are people who that's their whole job. There are people whose whole job is to try to get film companies to buy the rights to a book. So again, just tons and tons of ways to go in the industry.
Yes, I would also like to especially add on to what type of editorial work there is. With my interns, already doing like minor proofreads, such as should that comma be there? Is the space in between these lines consistent? So it's like small proofs such as that, or like developmental editing or content editing, but also like you mentioned, seeking out permissions for epigraphs or using quotations or even images, grant writing as well, or even on the marketing side, developing PR and press kits, send them out to magazines to potentially review or to interview the author, um, researching awards that we can potentially send the book out to, or to, consider various books for potential nominations. So there's a lot of different aspects of publishing, and also think about like marketing as well. A few of my interns also do our social media, so like actually creating the graphics for social media and like going onto TikToks, especially since book talk is getting so big now. So there are ways of thinking about publishing that isn't just, opening the book, but how to market the book and how to really develop the book from different angles.
And yeah, just to put a final point on that, I actually know somebody who is now an executive development editor who started as the receptionist. Like it's just kind of getting your foot in the door and then finding the opportunities once you get to know people.
Yes, absolutely. And I saw that Sierra snuck in. Hello.
Hello. Hi. So sorry about that.
No worries. I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of catch up. I'm going to give you like the giant question if you're ready to go.
Yeah, throw
So
it at me.
tell us tell us a little about how you got into publishing. What was your kind of start, your entryway, and how did that lead to your position where you are now?
Yeah, so my start into publishing was weirdly traditional, but not. So, when I graduated from UT, I had the full intentions of studying abroad in Korea. Not studying abroad, teaching abroad, sorry. Um, and I was going through the whole process, and then the pandemic happened. So it's kind of at a lull. And then I had Dr. Stillman introduced me to the NYU summer publishing course. So I took that over the summer, and I realized that there's just so much more to publishing than I initially thought, because it is weirdly a hidden world. And a year after that, I applied to grad school at the NYU Summer Publishing Institute, which is their grad school, and did my program there. And a month before graduating with my master's, I got a publicity position at Atria Books within Simon and Schuster. So, yeah, didn't have the intention, but it happened.
First off, congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
secondly, tell us a little bit about what you do in this publicity job.
Yeah, so in publicity, it is primarily working with the author to get them as much media for their books as possible. So anything you see in a magazine or online or in a podcast interview or a television interview, that's what a publicist does. We also help book the tours for the authors. So if you've been to an author event, a publicist was behind that. And that is mostly what we do. It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of talking to people and learning different lingo than I feel like other sides of the industry use. Um, so yeah, it's a lot of fun. You meet a lot of cool people.
Very cool. And you have some exciting news. Did you want to share?
Yeah, the reason I was late today was that I just got my first New York Times bestseller. Um, Thank you. It is a romantasy series. It's the first book in it, called Spark of the Everflame, and it was lucky number 13. So very excited. Haven't really processed it yet. The minute they announced it, I was like, okay, gotta go. Um, so I'm sure it will kick in when I can call my mom and tell her.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, and so I want to pivot a little bit to ask, since we have a number of English folks here, and this is technically an English event. How did a degree in English, for those of you who minor or majored or minored in English, prepare you for a career in publishing?
I guess I would say it's really all the things that you learn as an English major. It's um, it's being able to think critically, it's being able to analyze text, it's being able to recognize and use correct grammar. It's but like it's little stuff too. Like yesterday I had a meet with the provost and he was talking about having taught 18th century English novel. And so I mentioned one, right? Which I wouldn't have been able to do without my English major. I said, "Oh, did you teach some Smollett?" It just makes you look smart, right? But I think, yeah, all of the skills that you gain as an English major are going to serve you well in publishing and in any career, honestly.
Yeah, I think going back to the point we made about there's a lot of emails. So just generally, the ability to communicate is probably the biggest skill anybody is ever going to need as a professional anything. So being able to communicate, a vision, a little bit of copy, whatever it is always going to come in handy. And actually being able to do that for others as well. So one of the things that I love most about or being a development editor and not a writer, because I liked writing, but it was really hard for me to look at a blank page. But being able to take a bunch of ideas and shape them, that is where I really loved to be. And so if you can do that for others, so if you volunteer to tutor your friend or to tutor your friends, to work in the writing center, whatever it is, those kind of skills and that experience actually helps in your resume as well. But being able to do that and communicate to others exactly how to make something better, that is also a really big skill that you really gain as an English major.
So I'm not in English, I'm in cinema studies, but I've always described it as it's like an English degree, except we study movies instead of books. We also don't watch a lot of movies, it's mostly written books. I don't actually make movies. Apologies to everyone who thinks I make movies. I don't. I study them. And I think like a cinema studies degree or a comp lit degree or English, anything that's in the humanities is very much about critical thinking, but also close analysis and close readings. The close reading skills that I develop and the type of textual analysis that I've developed over the years have really helped me in my role as Sundress right now, being able to, pinpoint like specific changes or to see if the overall flow of a collection looks good, does it look good on the page, being able to like make those types of assessments, I think is something that you develop regardless of whether or not you're in like an English program, but just generally in the humanities, being able to not just read, but closely read and to analyze and to really think critically about, is this working well together? Why is this working well together?
Um, and bouncing off of that, a lot of it is very much the same of just being able to properly put words onto a paper is a lot harder than I feel like as English majors, it starts to become natural for us. But I have a roommate who's in STEM and love her, she cannot write an email to save her life. So it's a lot of like the basic skills that come with that, of course. But for what I do, I have to read a book quickly a lot of the times and then write a pitch to make people want to read it. And that takes a lot of creativity. And you find a flow eventually, but every single thing I pitch is different. And then I have to learn how to pitch something again, but a different way, make it more creative, make it more eye-catching for this specific person. So for publicity, you really do use the creative writing skills that you learn. And you don't realize that you'll do that. So it's fun.
And I think we've talked a lot about close reading and close analysis, but I think also the ability to see the big picture, right? So when you take your course in romanticism, you have to not only be able to do a close reading of that Wordsworth poem, but you also have to be able to see the big picture to characterize what is romanticism, what is this all about? And there's a lot of that too, especially in the operations side of the business. You have to be able to see, okay, why is this book selling and this book is not? Well, it's because Sierra wrote this great pitch. Let's get her doing more of that. So, seeing that larger picture is really important too. And again, your English major is going to help you with that.
So, how important are internships? I have students in office hours all the time asking, like, I got to get an internship beforehand. How important are they, and how does one go about finding and applying for them?
So I only had one internship before I got my job, and it was during my master's programs, and it was only like 2 months. So it was very brief. I feel like I didn't learn much because it was also when everyone was coming back from the pandemic. So my situation can be completely different. But speaking with my colleagues and everything, an internship is not integral, but it is nice to have on a resume, of course. And there are a lot of paid internships actually in publishing, which is very nice. And yeah, I'd say the way to find them is to utilize your peers and like your professors, because that's how I ended up where I was to get mine. And I had mine at Workman Publishing, uh, if anyone wanted to know.
Love Workman. I would say they're crucial, but not because of what you learn at them, but because of who you meet at them. They're exceptionally good for networking, as is the NYU publishing course. the Pace publishing course, the Denver publishing course. Those things are terrific too for being able to meet people. And I think that's you've got to get your foot in the door, especially as someone who's not coming from Dartmouth or Harvard or Yale, where a lot of the people who are in publishing in New York came from. So it's important to get to meet these folks, understand what they're doing, ask questions, get an informational interview, ask them to refer you to somebody who is doing something that you're interested in. And as far as getting those internships, I would encourage everybody to subscribe to Publishers Marketplace, which is kind of a daily email that you can get, and they list a lot of them there. But also just look at the book you're reading, look on the spine, who published that book. See if go to their website and see if they have internships. A lot of them, since the pandemic, do now have remote internships, and there are a lot of really great programs out there. So just do a little research. You know how to do that because you're an English major.
I'm definitely coming from a bias standpoint since I also run the internship program at Sundress. But I definitely think that I agree with what's been said so far, where it does look nice on your CV, it is nice to have, but it really does depend on what type of internship work do you want to do. Are you more interested in the marketing side, the editorial side, the social media side? But also, it really does open up doors for you, but first you need to get to that first door. And I think, being able to meet other people, especially if you come from a quote unquote like non-traditional background. My background is not in English, it's in psychology and cinema studies. So I'm coming from a non-traditional background, but being able to initially get your foot in the door and then like meet other people, it really is a business, it is an industry. I'm so entrenched in academia as well, and academia likes to pretend it's also not a business, but it is. And it is a lot of who you know and networking and who they can introduce you to. And in terms of find internships, Marketplace is amazing. Poets and writers have usually have like a directory of fellowships and residencies and other job and internship opportunities. Also, looking on social media, I found out about Sundress because of Best of the Net, and I was nominated for Best of the Net. And looking at their social media and being like, oh, they have this opportunity. So yeah, like utilizing these different research methods, or even following your favorite magazine on Instagram or Twitter, and seeing where that leads you.
I'll say one final word. So I did not go the internship route. I was kind of lucky to get in without it. That being said, a lot of the interns that I hired and got to work with did eventually come on board. So it was a great entry point for a lot of people. That being said, it's not maybe feasible for everybody, or internships are limited, but that doesn't mean you can't still get in the industry. So I think a lot of informational interviews, like talking to people, reaching out on LinkedIn, talking to people who are assistants at houses that you think are interesting. I mean, you can get to know people that way. They might connect you. It is an industry, it's a big network, but it's kind of small in a lot of ways too. So a lot of people know a lot of people and the same people. So really just getting, to know anybody will help. I'm in my apartment right now because of a contact I met who works at Penguin Random House through somebody else at a publishing group. Like, it's just kind of crazy how the world works. But we know a lot of people if you're in publishing generally.
So many of you have hired within the field as well. What advice do you have for students who are thinking about putting their feelers out for applications, whether those are internships or whether those are kind of beginning jobs in the field? What are you looking for in applicants, and what advice would you give those who are first starting out?
I have some really flip advice, but I have read hundreds, probably thousands of cover letters that have some version of when I was a kid, I used to sit up in a tree and read Anne of Green Gables. Well, you're going into publishing, everybody loves to read, And you have to convey your passion for reading and books and publishing, but you've got to do it in a way that fits the job that you're applying for, the company to whom you're applying. And just saying I'm a voracious reader is not going to get it for you. So you got to come up with something else. Maybe it's, oh, well, I'm applying to the University of Tennessee Press. I'm going to go see what books are on their website that maybe I've read. And so you could say, yeah, well, when I was reading Critical Connections, I learned so much about whatever. And then you're showing that not only that you're passionate about the field, but that you know something about the company that you're applying to as well. I would always have a tailored cover letter. Some people, in other industries now are saying, I don't even look at the cover letter. I always read the cover letter very carefully because you find out so much about a candidate by looking at that.
Do you want to go first? Okay. I completely agree. I also read the cover letter and I actually put a lot of weight on the cover letter. I will sometimes skim through the resume, but the cover letter is where I like really see what the candidate or what the applicant um like what their intentions are, like why they want to apply to this internship. And I also agree we're all voracious readers, or else we wouldn't be in an industry built on reading. But something that I do pay attention to is with Sundress, since we are like women and queer run, like do they have, similar values to what we do and the type of books that we publish? We really do focus on underrepresented voices and publishing those voices. So do our values align? Is this something that they see themselves doing, of like putting out work that, are representative of like different communities and different voices that traditionally have been sidelined? So think about like, what values do you have? Is this something that you want to do that is maybe out bigger than you, or something that can grow, out of you? Something that I've always appreciated about Sundress is the sense of like accessibility and also really centering marginalized voices. And I think that is, very indicative of the type of politics that are at play, that isn't just in publishing, but also in literature at large. So I really do, think about that. Where do our values align? Is this something that, would be beneficial for you, but also beneficial for the entire internship team? I run cohorts of about 6 to 7 interns, and they do work with each other. And also, since Sundress is rather integrated with each other, there's a lot of emails going up and down. Like, can we work, as a team as well? Is this something that I can see as not just working individually, but also as a collective, so we can get these books out into the world?
Yeah, I just want to, sign off on the cover letter again. I working in the educational side, I read so many. I love to read cover letters, and that's not what my industry was doing. So it was a really easy pass on those. So you don't want to be that person. But I really love what this conversation, you've just been having about values, because as much as it's true, get your foot in the door where you can get your foot in the door, but it's going to be easier and pay off in the long run too if you get your foot in the door of a place where you are really passionate about and you're going to go further. So definitely try to look for those, like somebody who is working with marginalized voices, somebody who does more nonfiction or political writing, if that's what's into, or what you're into, that kind of thing. So definitely follow them on social media and figure out what they're doing, and have something to say in your cover letter of, oh, I'm very into political writing there, so I started a conversation or a meetup group to talk about the latest writing. Have something to say that shows that you've done something along those lines to show those values.
I don't do hiring. I am on the associate level, but as someone who remembers when I got hired 2 years ago, I can give advice on like a cover letter thing. I say look at every single thing in a job listing, because when I was first going into the job market, I would kind of use this one like tailored script that I created, and I applied to like 30 jobs. This is also including internships at the time. Um, and didn't hear a thing until finally I sat down for the job that I'm in, and I realized that I saw this one little line that mentioned social media and TikTok. And I was like, well, I have, not to brag, 40,000 followers on TikTok. Maybe I should try to utilize this. And then I realized everything that I was just stating the facts that were already on my resume. So it's important to explain them more in detail. And even though I had the internship, I had the Summer Publishing Institute, I had my master's in publishing, I was still on the magazine track. And I wasn't very experienced in actual book publishing, but Atria publishes all the books I love, and I really wanted to work there. So I utilized my weaknesses and I tried to kind of wrap them as a strength. So I do, I, I don't have much experience in this aspect, but I would love the opportunity to learn more within your company. Here's why. And that's okay to admit. And also don't be afraid to show some personality. Like I had to put that I have a K-pop cake TikTok account. Not embarrassing to me, but to some, it could have been the one person who read it could have been like, absolutely not. You never know. So I took the risk and I got the job with that.
Well, as somebody
You
who's
never know.
hired, who had, I mean, it was day one or day two, there were 600 applicants or something. Like that's how big the volume can be. Something like that would have stuck out, like having the K-pop chant. Like that is a memorable anecdote. So I think that's
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, I think you want to stand out, but not too much, right? Don't have a pink resume, probably. But
yeah,
but
don't
also
spray
just,
it with perfume.
I mean, keep in mind, we know that you are just trying to get your foot in the door, but I think that really drilling down, what kind of publishing do I actually want to be a part of, and figuring that out and really going after it gung ho is going to help you get a job better than sort of, I want to go into publishing, but I'm not sure what. And it's fine that you don't know exactly what you want to do right now. It's probably going to change in a few years anyway. But presenting yourself as someone who has researched, figured out that that's a job that you want, and shows that you have done that work is going to go a long way to getting you a job.
I also wouldn't pigeonhole yourself though, too, at the same time. I know from my master's program that over half of the program was going into editorial, which is already a competitive space within the industry. Don't be afraid to try something new. This industry has a lot of movement as well. And yes, getting your foot in the door is important, but I think that if you have a skill, say, in what marketing is, like social media or graphic design, don't be afraid to like look into that. In the industry, there's a lot of opportunity in here. So you don't think that I can only find success in the one thing, or I can only get to what I want to be at in the one thing. Because I had a friend that was in marketing and then went to editorial 2 years later. So don't give up either.
Yeah, and that's actually the path in college publishing, is to go through like sales, marketing before you get to editorial. It's actually pretty rare to go straight into editorial in that space.
Well, I want to open up our discussion to our audience here with any questions that you all may have for our panelists. You can feel free to just jump in on the mic, or if you want to drop something in the chat, now is your opportunity.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you all, in terms of for the publishing industry, I know that a lot of jobs are centered around New York just because of the nature of a lot of offices being set there. But I know that there have been like some recent pushback on like some like lower salary scene for like entry level jobs within publishing. I don't know if any of you all encountered that when you were first getting started in the industry, but just wondering if any of you all have any tips for maybe finding jobs that offer like, you know, a bit more of a let's say like a livable salary for what's expected in New York right now, or is it just kind of expected to still kind of like work your way up, get your foot through the door with some of those entry level positions, and then just kind of move up from there?
I can hop on that as someone in somewhat of, I just got out of my entry level position, and I am lucky that Simon and Schuster has a good entry level paying salary, but do I still struggle to make rent in New York every month? A little bit, a little bit, but that's just because cost of living here also includes groceries and your social life and, you know, normal daily things. And I would say with my friends who are also in other publishing houses, there are difficulties realistically, of course, but we all get by and we're all fine and we're all able to still go to the movies. We're all able to still go to dinner together. So it's not impossible. And I don't think that that should be uh, something that deters you from this industry whatsoever. I love my job and I don't really care that I am struggling at the end of every month just because I like what I do every day. I can't imagine being miserable every day. Um, but also, I will say a lot of remote jobs are starting to become available, remote options. So I would look into those. And publishing doesn't just happen here, it happens in Nashville, it happens in California, it happens in everywhere. And there's a lot of local papers and smaller, like indie houses that you can get into as well. So I would definitely do your research on where you want to eventually end up. But also don't be surprised if you get pulled somewhere because I didn't think I would move to New York City. So
I will say it's been some time since I was an assistant, but it was a very, very low pay. Um, and I did somehow make it. You know, you do survive, as Sierra was talking about. And the entry level now is much it's doing better. Like there's been some changes. I'm not gonna say it's great, but there have been some pushes because of the inequality, because it's being recognized and called out largely on social media. So there's some really good movements happening. So yeah, so I would say don't necessarily rule it out because of that, but also kind of know what you're getting into if you do decide to make the New York move. I mean, personally, I think it's the best city in the world, so you can't really go wrong in my opinion. But so as far as that, there's also a lot of work you can do remotely, as Sierra was saying. And if you are interested more in the really mechanical stuff of like proofreading and copy editing, you might even pursue like more of a freelance kind of job, like taking projects as they come through sites like Readsy or something like that, which you can do from anywhere. Or that could be a supplement. I was still doing some online tutoring when I started in editorial to kind of. Sorry,
So,
my internet's having issues, I think. So sorry about that. But you know, there are opportunities, is my whole point.
so I'm in Toronto. Um, Close to New York, but not New York. I'm in Toronto, and Sundress is based in Knoxville, but we're a remote team. And definitely difference in Sundress is a nonprofit, and we're on the indie slash small press side of publishing. And that does like raise, like other questions about what it means to work in small press publishing versus for the big four, for example. Um, I know I've had interns who've gone from Sundress into Penguin Random House Canada, for example. So they work in like downtown Toronto. Um, Toronto is a pretty big publishing hub for Canada, but really also, it depends on what forms of publishing you want to do as well, which is part of this larger conversation of do you want to do more like academic publishing, trades publishing, um, smaller press publishing, like the big leagues. It really does depend on what you want to do, while also recognizing that there are like some concessions that come with that, where, working in a smaller press might not get paid as much or at all. We're volunteer based, but it is something that I love doing. It makes me very happy. I find it very fulfilling. So it's very much, finding that balance and doing what makes you happy and what that can potentially look like.
Yeah, all of those things. I've never lived in New York. I have spent a lot of time there, which made me realize I didn't want to live there. So that worked out for me. And when I started the custom division at Norton, since I was the one proposing the job, I didn't write move to New York into the job description, so I didn't have to do it. But there are a lot of sales positions all over the country in almost any place that you would want to live. But also every state has at least one and often two or more university presses, which is what I do. And if any of you all are seniors, make sure you watch the UT job site because we will be posting an entry-level publicity position in well, I'm not sure. They won't let me run two searches at one time in HR. So I have to close one before I open the other. But it should be posted before too much longer. So keep an eye out for that. But so there are jobs outside of New York. There are jobs outside of big city centers that are available to you.
We have a question in the chat. A lot of you have higher education, which makes me wonder if it's necessary or gives a better chance in getting a job.
I will say that mine did only because it helped me to understand where I needed to go. When I graduated from college, I was like really young and really stupid. And so I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And after getting a master's degree and other higher ed, it just kind of made me realize what direction, the path I needed to go. But there are millions of people in the industry who do not have master's degrees. So I wouldn't say that it is necessary, but I think it doesn't hurt. And again, networking, your grad school professors are likely to be eager to help you find a placement, and they probably know some people. So there's that aspect of it too. I'm always big on telling people, yes, get a master's. No, don't get a doctorate. That's my advice.
I think it is another thing that depends on, what kind of publishing you go into. In the education side of things, it was very helpful to have had teaching experience, which a lot of master's programs come with a teaching assistantship. So that was just a helpful thing. But again, I knew plenty of people who did not have that. So it makes for a really good writing sample, though.
What's interesting about mine was that I didn't have, so the NYU publishing course or the PACE one, I have friends that also went to PACE. Is it integral to get to the industry? No, but I do like the fact that it taught me the different sides of publishing. I went in thinking I absolutely wanted to do magazines, and no one tells you that magazines are like basically impossible to get into. I learned that at my school. And also just the language of the industry is important, but also I feel like because we're in it, we say, oh, do the research. Do you want to go into trade? Do you want to go into indie? But as an undergrad, I didn't know what that meant. I had no idea. So I think that those specific courses for your master's are really helpful, and there are scholarship opportunities that you can look into. And I found out about mine through my professors at UT. So don't be afraid to ask about those. But even doing the summer publishing course, which is a completely different thing, it's not your master's. It still helps you understand the industry, but you don't have to go to like grad school to get a job. Half the people I work with did not go to grad school. But I say it feels good to say you have a master's, absolutely.
There's a great question in the chat. Sorry, Kanika, I'm just running out of time. I want to make sure we get one last thing.
Completely understand.
I was wondering to ask of which things look best on a resume, and if there's anything that you can recommend joining as far as extracurriculars in college that might help out on this job search.
I will say, there's some kind of direct things like, were you the president or the editor of the literary magazine in college? Like those things help for sure. For me, it was, were you a tutor in the writing center? Because you're already doing some editing work. That kind of thing can really help. But if you don't have those, like say you've got a semester left or something, then I think just with any resume, kind of focus on the outcomes. So if you were the treasurer of your club, football team, touch football team or something, whatever it is, if you can show that you created a new system to make things more efficient and put that on your resume, like that's going to show the kind of like project management, initiative, leadership kind of qualities.
Yeah. And I would also say just include your extracurriculars and spend those, but we're looking for people who are smart and well-rounded and intellectually curious. So all of the things that you do, what we don't want to see is here's my education, here's my work experience, and that's it, and we don't get any sense of what your personality is like. We definitely want to see that. So I would definitely include your extracurriculars and think about how you can spend those and your work experience. I remember having a student a long time ago who said, "Well, I can't do a resume because I've never done anything." And so I started talking to him, and he said, "Well, all I've ever done is mow lawns." And I said, "Well, how did you get into mowing lawns?" And he said, "Oh, well, I knocked on all these doors until people let me mow their lawns." I'm like, "You're an entrepreneur, right?" So think about ways that you can make your experience speak to, as Leah said, how you can make it work in the job that you're going for.
I was in a sorority at UT and I just put down the fact that I was in Delta Gamma and this was our philanthropy. So this was my volunteer work. And then I was a Carnicus chair for a year. So I put that in. I was like, I can direct people. Things like that can also be helpful.
Absolutely. And I think I really do pay attention to skills. So even if you don't necessarily have like publishing or editorial experience, but what types of skills do you bring to the table? Like what organizational skills, detail-oriented skills, like you might, be part of a club in college, but were you the ones that was booking rooms so that you can have meetings or organizing events for these clubs? And I think that really shows like the types of soft skills that are quite necessary when it comes to working in this industry.
This has been so wonderful and so enlightening. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. So if we could just leave maybe with one last piece of advice that you'd like to give to those who are thinking about careers in publishing.
I will say have confidence and be courageous.
Don't be closed-minded about it. Be open to any opportunity, even if it's a book that you don't want to work on.
You kind of stole mine. I was going to say think outside the box, but I think that can apply to a number of things. So thinking about like looking for publishing jobs, even if they're not even in publishing houses, can be a way in.
I would echo what a few other people have said, but just go for it. Even if you think you don't hit XYZ requirements on the job posting, no, go for it. And besides, you're going to learn anyways on the job. We don't expect you to come in knowing absolutely everything. So why not? Like to quote Wayne Gretzky, you miss every shot you don't take. So if you don't apply, you already didn't get the job. So might as well apply.
Thank you again all so much for your time. I appreciate you, your experience, and what you do for the literary industry. So Thank you all so much. For those of you in the here joining us as part of our conversation, if you want to talk further about jobs in publishing, my career hours are Mondays from 3 to 4 and Wednesdays from 10 to 11. All of the information's up on the UTK website. You can also email me at esmith83@utk.edu to schedule a Zoom appointment. Happy to talk with you about your cover letter, finding jobs, resumes, mock interviews, anything that you'd like. Sierra also says she would be happy to chat as well, so I can put you in touch. So thank you again so much for your time. Oh, thank you, Katie. Y'all are the best. Thank you, everybody. So thank you all so much. And you all have a wonderful night.
Thank you for putting this together, Erin.
This is a joy.
Thank you,
you.
Erin.
Thank y'all
Sorry.
for coming.
Sorry I was a little late.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you all so much.